All right, so tell me if any of this sounds familiar. You're at work and you hear somebody raising irrelevant issues or bringing up things that were already decided. You've got somebody who insists on sending everything to committee and then making those committees as large as possible. Somebody's adding steps to what could be a simple task. You've got someone engaging in prolonged back and forth over something that was a straightforward directive, or somebody who is routinely irritable and quarrelsome, but never quite enough that they actually get in trouble. I'm looking around. Some of you have seen this in your day-to-day. This list actually came from a 1944 wartime sabotage manual, where they were advising civilian office workers on how to disrupt bureaucratic processes during times of hostile occupation. Now, when we see these things in the workplace, we certainly feel like they're intentional sabotage, and to the organization, they can be just as damaging. But in reality, that's really usually not what's happening. Organizational change can be destabilizing. Our organizations impact our jobs are how we feed our families and provide for our livelihoods. So when change is announced, people respond in a wide variety of ways. So for example, let's say you're working somewhere and they announce that they're going to begin automating the reporting process. IT hears, great, less support tickets. The department directors go, hey everybody, good news, we're modernizing. The person who spends all day every Wednesday manually running and emailing out those reports hears that she's being replaced by a robot, and the person who receives those reports hears that they're losing their human support system and assume they're going to be on their own to learn new tech. So you see there's one change announcement, but 4 very different experiences of it. So let's take a look at what's going on. So when somebody experiences this change, it brings up valid uncertainty about their role in the future or their job security. That is going to activate the stress response and trigger fight or flight. Those behaviors we see at the beginning, when people are stressed out, they're going to go and respond accordingly. Now, when we're in a workplace and there's widespread reorganization or a lot of change going on, workplace wellness materials tend to encourage this idea that employees just really need to get better at managing their stress. But here's the problem with that. Look around the world and everything that we have going on. Looking at somebody and telling them to just get better at managing stress actually is a lot to ask of people. And it shows a complete blindness to what the organization can do to step up and do better for people as they move through these processes. So early in my career, I learned this the hard way. I was leading what we would now call an innovation team or a modernization team. And at that time, we were trying to roll out what was the new and fancy tech, the cloud. So a lot of us were very, very excited. Document sharing was going to be easier. We could templatize and standardize processes. However, a lot of folks were very freaked out. So I thought, okay, hey, no problem. They just don't understand how this is going to benefit the organization and increase our productivity. So at our annual all-staff meeting, I thought that it would be a great idea to info dump to everybody all of the ways this was going to expand how many cases we could handle, as well as point out to them where exactly we were lagging behind our peer organizations in all of our metrics. So, as you can imagine, that did not help. I left people feeling overwhelmed. They felt like I was telling them nobody could do their jobs and that in general, any change initiatives were a widespread conspiracy to just cram more work into their day. So I thought, all right, people just need to learn to manage their stress better. So I started learning about brain chemistry, the biological processes involved in the stress response, got certified to teach meditation, taught mindfulness workshops and mental health seminars. And as far as comfortableness with organizational change, none of that helped either. Now, with that first initiative, we all eventually reached a common understanding, but I got to that common understanding through one-to-one meetings with every single person in the organization, sometimes more than one, where we sat down and really dove deep into their exact concerns and sources of anxiety. Fast forward later in my career, and I'm helping with tech rollouts in very large multinational law firms. And I was fascinated when I noticed the same exact patterns of human behavior and breakdowns in communication in some of the largest law firms in the world as I saw in a rural southern nonprofit. But the problem is that in an organization that has tens of thousands of employees or is spread out across a bunch of countries in the world, one-on-one meetings is not going to do the job. So I thought, okay, fine. If this is an industry-agnostic pattern, I can come up with an industry-agnostic system to help make this better. Now, a system is important first and foremost because it depersonalizes the problem. Right now, if a change rollout goes sideways, the conversation sounds a lot like, Sarah did not explain that right. That team over there, they're difficult, always resistant. And that is not always the most constructive place upon which to enter an emotionally charged conversation. If you have a framework in place for change communication, then you can address problems from the perspective of, hey, you know, in our announcement planning, we missed this step. Or when you look at the messaging, we can see where the information gap lies here. The second reason a system is beneficial is because it helps provide a grounded starting place during times of stress. Because guess what? The people who have to draft these emails to everyone, telling them that a change is coming, are stressed out too. So having a framework or a system that has a set of templates that they can use to start with helps them avoid analysis paralysis and give them some kind of guardrails for how to make sure nothing gets missed. And the third, often quite underlooked reason is that not everyone has the same level of innate emotional intelligence or comfortableness holding space for feelings. If you give somebody a system or a framework for starting these conversations, it gives them some guidance on where to start and how to validate emotions in an environment where the change is set, it's happening, the aspects of it are set in stone, and things are going to move forward. So, for this purpose, I created the framework DANCE. Now, DANCE has 5 steps: define, apply, nurture, clarify, and expand. The purpose of define is to very specifically state what's changing, what's not changing, and when you can expect the next update. Organizations very often assume that if they don't mention something in a change announcement, that people are going to infer that those items are staying the same. And guess what? They don't. Now, if you make sure you go through and clarify very specifically what is going to stay the same adjacent to these processes, it gives people a grounded place to start and understand the process changes that are going to go forward. The other very underlooked thing that people employ in their very first change announcement is setting an expectation of when people are going to hear from you again, even if you're not necessarily going to have new information at that time. The purpose of the second step, apply, is because no single message can address everybody's concerns. It just can't happen. So the apply process is where you tailor messaging to go out to individual groups. It explains how the change is going to impact those roles specifically, what concerns or challenges they can expect to face as the change is rolled out, and what support is available to them if they encounter those concerns or questions. Now, this is very important because you can hold all of the roundtables, Q&As, and survey response sessions you want. Some people, for whatever reason, are not going to come forward with their questions or concerns. They're going to wait, they're going to worry, and they're going to fill those gaps with speculation themselves. So, sending out and taking the time to send those tailored, targeted messages keeps them from fragmenting and spinning that rumor mill up in the absence of additional information. Now, the third phase is the absolute most important phase, and where without a structure in place to handle this, organizations will certainly 100% of the time see a slowdown in whatever change or modernization effort they're trying to roll out. The third phase is nurture. Nurture handles that quiet middle period. So organizations and teams tend to have a lot of excitement and a lot of information to share right at the onset of a process being rolled out or something happening. Then, after that initial burst of news, when the behind-the-scenes work starts to happen, things goes quiet. Because to the people managing the change, they're like, well, we don't have any new information, and there's no action items for people other than us anyway. They assume that people think no news is good news. Wrong. People do not assume that no news is good news. People do not feel neutrally about silence. Now, best case scenario, they think that maybe timelines are shifting or leadership's just losing the thread of what's going on. Worst case scenario, they think that you're not being transparent and withholding. So when this nurture phase comes up, even though it's a quiet middle period where there's not a lot of external activity, you don't have to have all of the answers, but you do need to show up. You need to let them know that there's nothing new to report, and you need to make sure that you're planning check-ins before they're needed and before people get to the point of uncertainty they feel like they need to ask. Again, this showing up period, just sending them a message to let them know that you're still there, you're not forgotten, here's some resources you can access while you wait, and feel free to reach out anytime, can do immense stabilizing work. Now, the last two phases are clarify and expand. Clarify and expand come into play after a change initiative has already had its initial rollout. So clarify helps clarify for everybody involved what timelines have shifted or what has changed since that initial change announcement. It helps show that while changes are inevitable, it does not mean that the initiative is destabilizing. And it also helps maintain trust when, after a quiet, silent period, you may come back with changing information and asks. Expand is a critical step for organizations who are rolling out change to multiple departments or decentralized organizations like universities or large hospital systems. Change is not usually rolled out to every single person in an organization at one time. It tends to start in cohorts or in departments. After that first rollout happens, you take those learnings in this expand phase, see what process adjustments you need to make, and then you roll it forward into other groups. But you have to have a process for onboarding those new groups, because a one-size-fits-all approach, like we saw in the apply phase, is not going to be appropriate. You also need expand planning so that when you onboard new employees during a change that's actively being rolled out, you don't see this creep in of legacy processes. Now, earlier today, I opened with behaviors that from the outside feel deliberate, coordinated, and personal. And as somebody who is frequently leading these change announcements, I can tell you that it is very difficult not to internalize them that way. But again, taking a step back, that is often not what's going on. People are simply responding with an activated nervous system. Now, the question in situations like these is never how to get those people to stop engaging in those behaviors. They're a symptom. Erasing them is not the cure. The real question here is, what responsibility do organizations have to the people on the receiving end of their change announcements? And are they going to enable the systems that allow those obligations to be met? When you can thoughtfully take the time to tailor a message, you significantly can reduce unnecessary stress. If you're on the receiving end of a message and you get an eye for recognizing what information is missing and what you need to ask for, you have the agency to reach out for what you need to move on and do your job. Together, with some thought, change can be something that people participate in, rather than something that happens to them. We all just need to do a little dance.